She can bring forward the date of the election at her discretion after 4 years have elapsed since the date of the election. There is no such flexibility in respect of the second term. As far as the second term is concerned, it is for the Elections Commissioner to determine the date of the presidential election, and that has to be 6 years after the holding of the previous election, which was in December 1999. So our position is the presidential election has to be this year. The Elections Commissioner has to decide. As far as we are concerned, that is the only solution to the country's problems. The country must be given the opportunity of selecting a president of their choice this year.
Professor, the Prime Minister, Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa himself had taken up the position with the President that it is the Elections Commissioner that has to decide when the next election is going to be, and not the President in terms of the third amendment to the Constitution. Now the Elections Commissioner is not aware of any secret oath-taking ceremony. Does that mean that he would have to go by the oath-taking ceremony that took place soon after the presidential election in December 1999?
Yeah, because in fact there is no other ceremony at all. I think the rest is fictitious. No one in the country was aware that such a ceremony was taking place. I was at that time the Minister of Constitutional Affairs. I was unaware. I don't think the present Prime Minister was aware. So that has to be treated as a piece of fiction, and we have to go on the basis of the only public ceremony that took place. Indeed, the swearing in of the President of the Republic has of necessity to be a public ceremony.
Professor Pires, thank you for speaking to Newsline. That was UMP spokesperson Professor G.L. Pires. That's all we have time for today's segment of Newsline. We'll be back. Welcome to Newsline. The JVP has quit the government, but the government seems confident that it can carry on regardless, with the UMP also stating that it will not derail the government over the issue of the joint mechanism. We now have with us online the Deputy Minister for Health, Mr. Mahinda Abewardena. Good morning, Mr. Abewardena.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining Newsline. Mr. Abewardena, headlines in today's Daily Mirror says government on tightrope, and the island says CBK rules out snap polls. How confident are you that the government can survive the exit of the JVP?
Well, I think we have to think about our country before everything. Now, we have had so many elections for the last few years. I don't think that the country can afford to have elections. So therefore, if we are going for elections now, it's not good for any political gaining or economically it's very bad. So therefore, I don't think that sensible political parties would decide to go in for election at this hour for nothing. And well, JVP have decided to leave the party. That is their democratic right. But I think the President is quite confident to carry on with the government and to deliver whatever the goods that could be delivered to the nation, I suppose.
Mr. Abewardena, now as you said, yes, delivering the goods to the people comes on top of the list for any government, but we have seen during the last year the moves by the President have been crippled time and again by the JVP, in fact opposing to all economic reforms the government proposed. The JVP opposed the setting up of a joint mechanism. How is the government going to face this situation if the JVP continues to provoke people and agitate and demonstrate and try to cripple state institutions and other business organizations by staging mass protests at a time the people are facing increasing burdens with cost of living going up due to world oil prices and so on? Is the government ready to meet such a challenge in the interest of the people, notwithstanding the form alliance with the JVP?
Well, government will have to do it under whatever the circumstances. Because the JVP or whatever the political party that try to disturb the country, whether you have the power or not, the President of the country will have to tackle the situation. There is no doubt about it.
Mr. Abewardena, how are you planning to move ahead with your reform agenda now in Parliament, given the equation with the JVP pulling out? Of course, the UMP had said that it will not derail the government. The TNA has also said that it will support the government. But are you in a position to bring in any crucial pieces of legislation at this point of time?
Well, that's really a challenge. So we will have to go ahead with our good policies and to where we can muster the support from all the political parties wherever possible.
Mr. Abewardena, thank you for speaking to Newsline. That was Deputy Minister for Health, Mr. Mahinda Abewardena. We now have with us online UMP parliamentarian Mr. Kabir Hashim. Good morning, Mr. Hashim.
Morning, Lasantha.
Thank you for joining Newsline. Mr. Hashim, the JVP has finally quit the government after a little over 1 year honeymoon with the SLFP. Do you think that the UMP will move quickly to topple the government in this situation of uncertainty within the alliance?
The UNP will not play politics with national issues. We will look at the country first. Therefore, we will not take this issue up to send the government home, but we will make the right decision at the right time. The UNP will know when to make its move. We will look at how responsibly the government is going to act in the next few months or days or whatever, Lasantha. What I would think is that the JVP has never acted responsibly in the interest of the nation. If you look back in history, in when Mr. J.R. Jayawardena, His Excellency J.R. Jayawardena signed the Indo-Lanka agreement, which today by far is a agreement that everybody accepts. They set the country on fire and created chaos. And at that time, they said it was a betrayal of the country, but history has clearly defined that that agreement was very much necessary. It was the same with the ceasefire agreement. When Honorable Ranil Wickrematunge signed it, they brought down our government saying that it was a betrayal of the country. They have 1 year and 3 months, and it takes only 14 days to give notice for either party to quit the ceasefire agreement. The JVP, if they said it was a betrayal of the country, could have just quit in 14 days. This shows their absolutely been fooling the people of this country. And once again, they have quit purely for selfish reasons and not for the country.
Mr. Hashim, now the JVP, of course, has been launching several protest campaigns, agitating, bringing the people onto the streets. They have also been protesting against the government's economic reform package. Now, how do you think the government should meet the challenge if the JVP continues to agitate and take to the streets and cripple the economy? Because at the end of the day, whether it's the government ruling party or the main opposition, the UMP, you are all accountable to the people and are supposed to look after the people's interests. How would the UMP back up the government in such a situation where the JVP would attempt to cripple state services?
We are not going to play a role of propping up anybody, Lasantha, but we have the national interest at stake. The JVP, I don't know what moral right they have to come out now and protest, because this is their government according to them. I can't understand how they can say they are quitting when they said that this is our government, and if anybody wants to quit, let it be the SLFP or the other partners, because they said they call the shots. So everything that has happened, anything that has been done, they are responsible. They are only trying to now not take responsibility for unpopular measures. If they had to move out, then they should have taken up other issues which would have been more relevant, because they promised some of the beneficiaries all their payments. They didn't pay them. They promised graduate employment in 3 months. Not one graduate is employed up to now. The cost of living has gone sky high and the poor have become poorer. And now on Mr. Somawan Samarasinghe is speaking about giving a glass of milk to school students. Their manifesto says that every school child will be given a glass of milk. They have not been even given a glass of water. Even the water that they were being given is deprived. The JVP should have resigned 6 months ago if they stood to their principles, or they should have kicked out the other partners and committed to their promises. So I believe that the people of this country will see through this, and people such as Mr. Somawan Samarasinghe, who leads the JVP, lives half his time in England and half his time in Sri Lanka. They want chaos in this country, because if you take free education, they've been depriving children of going to universities, they've been creating chaos. People such as Mr. Somawan Samarasinghe have got there. While he was in prison, and he did his diploma in engineering, London-based exam in engineering diploma. But when a Sri Lankan student wants to do that, then they deprive them, saying that they should not have private classes or private institutions. So these people talk without any basis, and therefore I believe that the citizens of this country will see through all this.
Mr. Hashim, there is also a school of thought that the JVP may not be as vociferous as they were earlier while in government, because they are concerned that the government might, and the president in particular, might crack down on the JVP, and particularly Mr. Somawan Samarsingh, who was basically a fugitive who had escaped from this country and was brought back by the president by giving him a new passport, and that there were several cases pending against him, including robbery of state banks, jewelry and so on, and that as a result, now that they have gone back to the opposition, that they will act with greater caution because the president may move against Mr. Singh. Do you think that is a possibility?
It's quite a possibility, Lasantha, because I read in the papers recently that a man was arrested for stealing a loaf of bread from a woman who was walking down Mount Lavinia. The man robbed the loaf of bread because he's starving, his family is starving. That's the state of the economy today. And that poor man was arrested. I don't know what punishment he got. If you can arrest a poor man who stole a loaf of bread, then people who have robbed banks and killed thousands of people should also be punished in the same way. So the president must make up a mind.
Mr. Hashim, the JVP, Mr. Somawan Samarsingh had also said that despite them quitting the government, they will ensure that the UMP will never be returned to office. How would you respond to that statement?
It is not for Mr. Somawan Samarsingh or the JVP to decide whether the UNP will be returned to power. It is for the people of this country to decide that, because nobody else has the right to say when we will return to power other than the citizens of this country. And that clearly states that on one side, the JVP is saying that this government has betrayed the country. That means that this government should not be in office.